Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Red and Blue Review. I'm your host. My name is Nick Philpott, and as you can see, I'm joined this evening, as usual, by my wingman, Jel Holyoke. Evening, Jel. You okay, mate? Jel?
I'm good. You all right?
Nice you join us. And there's the laggy bit of it. And of course, as you can see, I'm also joined by our very, very special guest, Kieran Maguire, who most of you will recognise from Sky Sports or the excellent Price of Football podcast, and will tonight be giving us an insight and hopefully helping us make sense of this surrounding the current lockdown and all the financial implications on the game we love. Kieran, thank you, mate, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm grand. Thanks very much for the invite. Really looking forward to it.
Listen, it's an absolute pleasure. Jel, I just want to make sure your legs are okay. Are you with us now? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's all right. I was just I had it on mute.
Okay. Every week he does that, by the way, Kieran. He thinks it's his funny way of thinking. I don't know. I want to host up. Okay, but there you go, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are watching in the world. Thank you for joining us here on this and giving up your Sunday evening. We are very, very grateful. And I say we are blessed to have Kieran alongside us. But before we get into the show, if you are watching us live, please hit the share button right now. Please hit the share button and start your very own watch party to allow us to reach as many people on your wall or timeline as possible. And we would love to have as many people join us on the show as possible. Kieran, thank you for spending this time. You are clearly in demand at this time. Everywhere I've seen recently, you have popped up. You are Mr. Popular, are you not?
Well, there's nothing proper to talk about. So, yeah, it has been ludicrously busy. I've done over 300 interviews so far this year. I started off this morning with Bloomberg. I've done Radio Scotland, 7 o'clock tomorrow's Radio Stoke, and then I'm on two more podcasts tomorrow. And I don't even know who they're for. But you know, my main line of communication is with Kevin Day, who's an absolute delight to work with.
Absolutely. So, folks, those of you who haven't listened to that podcast, and I have, it makes what can be construed as a fairly mundane subject highly entertaining and highly interesting, mate. So take some absolute credit for it. That is a very, very good podcast, one I thoroughly enjoy. Thank you. So, is he there?
Yeah, I've got a Palace fan outside my window waving a Palace flag.
Tell me, so everybody knows what it says. Tell me what the flag says. So
it says CPFC, and it's got. Show it again.
The Eagles have landed.
Yeah, the Eagles have landed. That's right. Yeah.
So tell us, how did you become one of the foremost authorities of football finance in the UK?
I've got absolutely no idea. I mean, I've been teaching I started teaching in the 1980s, and I found that whenever I spoke about football, students woke up. Because I've taught in Manchester University, I've taught in the States, in Asia, and so on. You start telling people about football, and they take more of an interest. Liverpool University have a specialist football unit, and they headhunted me. It was as simple as that. They'd heard me talk about it. I was also very lucky-ish that in 2005 I was teaching down in London. I was teaching some investment bankers who'd been advising the Glazers on the day the deal went through that the Glazers took over Manchester United. And about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just as the deal was announced, all the shutters came across the windows. 4 huge bouncers appeared at the front door. And I said, well, what's going on, lads? And they said, well, we think there could be a bunch of Cockney Reds who are going to come down here and put the windows out. So I got to hear a little bit about the deal. And as I was travelling back to Manchester, because I've lived in Manchester most of my life, to go back to work, back to university, the BBC phoned up the university and said, can somebody explain the deal? And the university press office just put the BBC on to me. All of a sudden, you then become the go-to person for the BBC to speak to, and then it gets picked up by Sky, and then it gets picked up by ITV. So that's it. So it's just a pure accident.
Well, I'm telling you now, it's already I don't know if you've got access to our chat on the Facebook page, on the Red and Blue review page. But the first comment that came through was from Andrew Adams, who said, "Mr. Price of Football, welcome."
Thank you very much.
So, okay, I'm going to kick off if you don't mind. And I say I've got dozens of questions sent in all by Palace fans, your favourite people, I know. Okay, there were lots of questions, but the first one is actually going to be from me. So forgive me because like Grant's later on, it is a little bit meaty. So, can you think of another industry, maybe apart from the film industry, where such money is swilling around, such a load of money is swilling around at the top end, the majority of it being paid to the talent within that industry, and therefore leaving so little at the bottom end? And as a subsequent question, do you see the world changing post COVID-19, and will things have to be done differently?
Well, if I answer those questions in turn, football lives beyond its means, and it lives beyond its means because a 1% increase in talent will cost you an extra 20% in wages. And the clubs know that, and the players know that, and their agents know that. And we fans, we don't really want to get involved with that. We just want out the best players. So you want to keep Wilf, so therefore you've got to go and pay him what his agent and Wilf wants. We want to keep Lewis Dunk. Manchester United want to keep Marcus Rashford. And the way to do that is to give them a wage deal which keeps them happy, but it does leave risks for the club. So we see that in the Premier League to a certain extent, but when you drop into the Championship, everything goes completely nuts, because in terms of that increase in money coming into the game, if you can increase your income from £20 million to £140 million by having a 1 in 8 chance. If you think about it, in the Championship, you've got a 3 in 24, a 1 in 8 chance of achieving that. How much money would you spend to get that winning ticket? And that's why we see this crazy level of spending. Reading last season spent £224 in wages for every £100 that came through the door. And we thought that Harry Redknapp at Birmingham was nuts. Well, Reading have got Chinese owners. They know relatively little about football. They effectively delegate everything to an agent or two, and then the money just starts going out of bank accounts, and they're just subsidising it. So there are very few industries. I think Formula One's quite similar.
Of course.
So that's another example. But most other industries exist to make money. Steve Parish isn't in it to make money, is he? That's not his. And if he was, you'd be really disappointed in him because he's a Palace fan. So football is unusual, because even if you compare, people say, well, what about the NFL? In the NFL, you own a franchise and you're aiming to make money. So actually, they've got a wage cap which works. In the Premier League, half the owners, you think about the guys in charge of City, you think about Abramovich, not interested in how much money they lose. For them, it's glory, it's trophies, it's the kudos of when you're entertaining another person on your super yacht. You can say, by the way, I own Chelsea. We've got Liverpool coming next weekend. Fancy coming in my director's box. And when you're dealing with the super wealthy, they've all got the yachts. They've all got the apartments in Monaco. Yeah. They've all got the private helicopters. Premier League, only 20 people in the world at any one time can own a Premier League football club. And that's why it's nuts, because it's a trophy asset. It's not a traditional business.
I've got, like I say, I've got dozens of questions for you, but I'm going to actually just talk about the current situation, if you don't mind. And by the way, there's people literally from all over the world saying hello to you. And there's Australia, New Zealand saying good morning to you as well. So guys, I can see all your comments in the chat. Keep them coming, okay? Lucy will collate them for me as we're going through this. If you've got any questions, please keep them coming through. I wasn't going to mention the fact that Kieran is a Brighton fan, okay? He's a Brighton fan that is more than welcome. He just spoke about Lewis Dunk, so he told you himself. So I was going to... So keep the comments pleasant, please, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we all know there's a rivalry, but we're in serious times, and I want to keep this on the right track, if you don't mind. So you saw yesterday Germany. You saw yesterday Germany in a closed stadium. Do you really think in the UK we are ready? Do you think this is the time that our players should be going back training? Obviously you're not an authority on the medical side of it. I get all that, but I'm just, for somebody who must have discussed it on one of his interviews at some point, I'd just love to know your thoughts.
It's being driven by money. So the reason why football in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in France, and in the lower leagues in Scotland has been stopped is simply that the cost of putting on the games is more than the money that you would generate from carrying it on. When it comes to the Premier League, that's different. If the Premier League abandons the game for this season today, we're talking around about a £750 million rebate to the broadcasters. We've got money due back to season ticket holders. Now, they might not want it back, because I've been offered my money back, and I said, just give it to a charity. So, I think lots of fans who can afford to not get their season ticket money back will do so, but there will be some fans who can't afford it. They might be furloughed, they might have lost. So, no judgment here, but potentially clubs are going to lose money in terms of having to give season ticket money back. And then, of course, you've got the sponsors. Well, the sponsors have signed up for their product to be associated with the club for 10 months on the pitch, around the terraces, and they're losing out as well. So the total rebate, worst case scenario for the Premier League, £1.2 billion.
It's just telephone numbers, isn't it? It's just telephone numbers. It's interesting you mentioned the Belgium and Dutch leagues, because Ian Lyons, who is very closely connected to the show, his question was on that very subject. He said, with the Belgian, French and Dutch leagues now having ended, what are Kieran's thoughts on how the English leagues should be concluded? And he's given me some supplementaries on that as well. So how do you think that, we know what's happening with Division 1 and 2 now. What do you think about the Championship and the Premier League? Your personal thoughts?
Premier League will fight tooth and nail to have it completed. I think there's pressures coming from three areas. There's pressures coming, I think, from the owners and the clubs themselves, because if the season is abandoned, you cannot come up with a solution which will please everyone. So somebody is going to potentially get relegated. Both the Football League and the FA have said that they will force the Premier League to relegate clubs, and they will take it up legally. So we've got pressure coming. So the legal cases will be an absolute minefield. The clubs who are in the bottom three positions, they will say, quite rightly, we could win our next 9 matches. Yeah, what happened to Leicester in 2015 when it looked like they were dead and buried? They discovered some form. So the clubs that potentially will get relegated, they will put in a legal claim. So we've got the clubs wanting the matches to be finished. We've got the government wanting the matches to be finished because, and this isn't a political comment, Germany have started. Now, if Germany can conclude their football season and the UK doesn't or can't, isn't that reflective of the way that the German government has dealt with COVID compared to the UK government? So now the government...
And a very valid point.
Yep.
Sorry.
Have you seen the reversal, haven't we? 3 weeks ago, Matt Hancock was laying into the footballers about their wages. Why? Again, I'm not a political person. I've got no interest in any political parties. But now its reaction, now it can get the country going again. It's good news, and so on. But actually, what's driving the government's viewpoint is that they're going to look fairly silly if the UK effectively admits that it can't deal with COVID to the same extent that South Korea has, because the J League started 1 week ago, and clearly Germany started yesterday. It was no fun watching it, though, was it? It was better than nothing.
Do you know what?
That's about
and
it.
The absolute truth is, and I'm a huge football fan, and I have been all my life. Okay, I walked to the other side of the wall. There's my lounge. My son was in there watching it, and he'd playing with his mates, social distancing. Obviously, online they were going to be there all afternoon watching it. I walked in there. I sat on the sofa. I saw the first a minute and a half, and I walked out and I didn't go back again, because that, to me, that wasn't football. That was an exercise in let's get the job done. Simply, let's just get the job done. And by the way, as the comments are coming through, I'll just pick up on something that Laurie Scott has just said. I see that Everton have announced credits or refund to season ticket holders already. So Everton have actually already. Mr. Lyons has joined us. Ian, I'm halfway through your questions here. Okay, so Ian went on to say his supplementary questions on that. What effects will these likely have on things like TV contracts, players' contracts, potential lawsuits you've already touched on, and the integrity of the league?
Well, let's just deal with these. In terms of the TV contracts, the Premier League is effectively in breach of contract because it has failed to supply matches for half of March, for April, and for May. Now, Sky and BT, they need the Premier League. So they are unlikely to take too harsh a line. If the Premier League turns around and says, look, we can't have done anything for the last 2 months, but we're going to come back third week in June, we're going to conclude the season. Is it 92 games left, of which BT and Sky are contracted to have 47. Here's a deal. We'll give you 70 of those to make up. And the other 22 we're going to put out on YouTube channels. BT and Sky will say, that's fine. The overseas broadcasters are not as reliant on Premier League because they've got their own domestic sports. They've got other sports. They'll be. So I think the overseas broadcasters will say, you're in breach of contract. We're not going to pay the final instalment of our deal. And I think the Premier League will just have to suck it up. So potentially, we're looking at around about a £300 million shortfall from overseas TV rights if the overseas broadcasters say, we're not interested in football in empty stadiums in June and July. My gut reaction, BT and Sky both need the Premier League just as much as the Premier League needs BT and Sky, so they'll come to some form of arrangement.
I'm sure. Before we move on to the next question, what would be your preferred way to end this season? Would it be finish the season off now, potentially do a mini league? What do you think they should do?
We signed up for 38 games. We should play 38 games. That's my.
Is that spoken as a Brighton fan that needs the points, or? Because if they were to end it now, Brighton wouldn't go down anyway.
Yeah, no, we don't. So if it ends it now, we don't need the point. No. I bought my. If we're not good enough on 38 games, we deserve to get relegated. End of story. Okay.
So you're not one of those that would advocate giving Liverpool the Premier League trophy now?
Well, we all know that they have won it. They only need to play another 3 games to have it confirmed. I work at the University of Liverpool. None of my mates want them done it now because it will be 2019-20 Liverpool asterisk. They don't want asterisk next to their name for this season. They want to have won it by having enough points that nobody can catch them. Once they play the next 3 games, they don't care.
Yeah, Ian. I know Ian's got a particular
invested interest.
He's got a vested interest in what I'm asking you next. Okay, what influence do UEFA have over any decisions taken by the UK leagues? Can they enforce a certain decision? And you've alluded to what you think the best decision will, the best solution will be. Now that Ian has got a vested interest in what, do you think UEFA have got any influence over our decision making?
No, UEFA have actually said they're going to delegate it to individual countries. All they want is a final decision to have been made by the 25th of May, because that will allow them to go ahead with their planning for 2021 in terms of the European Championships, the Champions League and the Europa League. And if we choose to abandon, that's fine. If we choose to go ahead, that's fine. So long as we give them an answer, they'll work on that basis, because they've not complained about what's happened in Belgium, in France and in the Netherlands. They've not complained about Germany carrying on. They've said, you've got local knowledge, we'll delegate it to you.
Down to you.
But you need to keep us informed.
Ian.
That's interesting. You brought up the Germany thing, Kieran, because obviously, I don't know if you have, but I'm sure many of the people that are watching have been watching the Bundesliga games yesterday and today. And I was very interested in how there seems to be pretty much full contact. They seem to be managing, and the teams themselves seem to be approaching things in the right manner. And fortunately, if fingers crossed, they get away without any further positive tests for another couple of weeks, do you think this weekend's games will expedite the actual decision and make the decision for the Premier League teams?
I think it will certainly be an influence on it. It was quite clear that players were giving 100% yesterday. And to a certain extent, we've all played park football. Well, isn't this just park football with professionals? In terms of the environment and the atmosphere. Whenever I played park football, it never bothered me when anybody was shouting at me. And I think the players will adapt very quickly because they are used to playing 11 versus 11 in training. And also, the vast majority of the players, especially, and I'm not being rude here, the players for clubs such as Palace and Brighton who are not in the Big Six, their contracts are very much geared towards results. So it's appearance bonuses, win bonuses, draw bonuses, end of season position bonuses, and the players know that they could be getting an extra $100,000 by putting it all in between now and the end of the season. So they will do so.
So coming back to your thoughts that the 38 game season has to happen, and my invested interest in this is that this is something we've got. Nick and I have got a curry on this, so I'm hoping you can back me up here. Is that I've always said that they will need to finish the season, by completing it. But so clearly you're on that side, which I'm really grateful for. But how do you think they're likely to finish it? Do you think they're going to finish it now? Do you think they will get rid of the Carabao Cup? How are they actually going to fit these extra games in order to do it?
Well, I think there's a couple of icebergs that we need to deal with. And the first of which is that players will be out of contract on the 30th of June. So you've got people like Adam Lallana at Liverpool, your other players at different clubs. Now, the way that most professional contracts operate is that your contract expires on the 30th of June, and you're normally given an extra month's pay, effectively, holiday pay or whatever. So that allows clubs to go on to the 31st of July. And I think that would probably just about work. So if we start on the 30th, say about the 20th of June, it will be playing twice a week. That's why FIFA have said clubs can make 5 substitutes during a game, because it's accepting the fact that there's going to be more wear and tear on footballers. So therefore, it will allow the manager and the coaches to rotate during matches to keep the players as fit as possible, with an aim to finishing before the end of July. And I think that will be the key date as far as the clubs are concerned. The knock-on effect for last season, Carabao Cup, nobody's interested in it. Let's be honest.
Not now we're out, no.
Yeah. And even when we are interested, even when we are in it, we're not really interested. Do I have to go? And it's that type of attitude. So I think there's issues with the Carabao Cup, but that's the EFL's baby. So they might just simply take a payoff from the Premier League, and the Premier League says, either our sides aren't going to be in it, or just scrap the damn thing, or just play it amongst yourselves. So there's no interest in the Carabao Cup. The winter break, I think that can go. International breaks, they might go as well, because I think the opportunities to travel will be reduced. With the other potential issue is if they do go for some hybrid, and I'm not in favour of a 22 team or a 23 team Premier League next season. It's not what we all ask for. I don't see how you can fit in 44 Premier League games, potentially 14 Champions League games for some of the Big Six, and you've got the FA Cup as well. The numbers don't add up. The Big Six clubs will not accept the Premier League money being split 23 ways, when they know that if they say no, that it will only be split 20 ways, because it's going to cost them money.
And of course, and as you touched on before, with regards to the effect it has on other clubs, is that clearly it would have an effect on the Championship and the size of that. And then how would that play out? And then would they have fewer games and therefore less money to as far as gate receipts, etc., etc. For me, it's just an absolute minefield if they do anything other than complete the league fixtures.
That's right. And that's why there was the meeting of League Two clubs on Friday where they said the top three are going up, then there's going to be the playoffs between the next four teams, and nobody's going to be relegated. And that's what the League Two owners agreed. I suspect that's going to be vetoed by the Championship clubs, because the Championship clubs say, well, if League Two do that, that creates a precedent. The Premier League bottom three might try the same, and that might impact on our ability to get promoted. So the amount of politics involved at present is ridiculous. You've got WhatsApp messages. Somebody forwarded me a WhatsApp message from somebody, I can't say who, very senior in football. I can't say what he said about me because there's children watching. I'm going,
we've got a beat machine.
I've never met this guy in my life. He's one of the senior guys in football, and why is he having to go at a teacher? So, anybody who just brings to light, and that's my job. My job is to analyse the numbers and to analyse the financial implications of all decisions. Well, I've just sort of said to a few journalists, this can't happen because this will impact on the numbers, and that's what they're trying to keep out. There's all this talk about sporting integrity.
Yes.
Okay. If you talk to a football owner about integrity, to them, that's the name of an Argentinian fullback. They've got no idea.
That don't say how much is he worth.
Right. Graham Kitcher asks you, good evening, Graham. Thank you for joining us, mate. How are the FA going to support the lower clubs with financial aid to stop them facing financial ruin? Are we aware of any statements around this yet?
From the Football Association, no. The Football Association is there to support England, is there to run St George's Park, and is there to run the FA Cup and park football. It's not interested in lower league football. And my big fear is for the clubs in the National League and League Two and League One and the lower leagues in Scotland, because those are the clubs who are most at risk because they are so much more dependent upon match day revenue. Premier League can get by without it. You've got a club such as Bournemouth. For every £100 that comes in, £3.80 comes from the turnstiles. So, if Bournemouth don't play another game for a year, provided they get their TV money, they're not even going to notice. As you drop down the leagues, that becomes more important. The FA don't have a huge amount of cash, but they do have some. But a lot of that cash is committed to paying back the loans for St George's Park and paying the loans on Wembley and things of that nature. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room, and it's cost the FA a fortune this summer because they were planning to make an awful lot of money from hosting all of those Euro 2020 matches. Because the ticket prices for those were obscene. I had tickets to see one of the England games. It was about 170 quid. It's just taking the mickey.
I don't know if you can see the questions that are coming up on the screen as we're talking live. Teresa's just asked, are we aware of any clubs that are on the brink of collapse?
Yes. I don't think it's right to name them, but there are clubs that have failed to pay wages.
Right.
There are clubs who are just simply said to the players, we're going to furlough you. We can't make up the other 20% of your wages. And if you want to leave, then there's nothing we can do about it. But I don't think it's right to name and shame them. Well, not shame them because they've done nothing wrong.
Of course they haven't.
They didn't create it's not like the bankers who created the crisis in 2007. Footballers didn't create the crisis then, didn't create the crisis now. They are lower league footballers, just like you and I. Their husbands, their boyfriends, their dads, they got mortgages and so on. It's a precarious career.
Transfers is a question. Actually, before we come on to that, by the way, I've moved away from one whole page full of one question. We all know who that's from, don't we? So I've left it to one side for the moment, okay? Because we know what it just. You mentioned about Bournemouth and how much they spend with every £100 coming in. Would you happen to know what Palace's figures are? Are you close to Palace's figures in terms of spend?
Yeah, Palace Palace got £10.9 million of match day income out of a total of 150 million. So that works out at around about, in my head, around about 6.7%.
6.73, but you're close.
I was going to pick him up on it, Ian, but he's the guest, okay?
Listen, we're spreadsheet geeks, Nick. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
You two definitely are. So, could you? I mean, while we're on the subject of Palace and Palace's finances, what sort of overall position do you think Palace are in at the moment with finances?
I think the Palace business model is an interesting one, in the sense that they have invested very heavily in players and wages since coming into the Premier League. So if we take a look at their accounts since 2014, their core profit, £23 million in 2014. That dropped to 9. They made a loss of 14 in 2016, a loss of 26 in 2017, and a loss of 39 last year. So their finances have deteriorated, but the reason why they've deteriorated is because they've invested in players to try to ensure that they stay in the Premier League. So it's when they first came in, they were spending 51 pence out of on wages for every pound of income. By the time we got to 2018, that had gone up to 78. So that was the highest of any club in 2018. Although we have seen both Bournemouth and Everton go to 85 in 2019. That's the Palace strategy, and it works. Because if you think about all the previous times Palace got promoted to the Premier League, they didn't invest in players and they were relegated straight away. So that's the model, and provided they keep staying up, that model works.
Ian?
And I think you're right, but I'm sure, like a lot of people watching, that we think, yeah, okay, it works for now. But it's one of those strategies. All you need are, we've had some horrendous injuries this year, and we've been quite fortunate in that we've managed to have Roy Hodgson to set us up defensively to get points. But sooner or later, that is quite a short-term strategy. Now, clearly, other clubs such as your own have put a lot of investment into the infrastructure and don't necessarily spend quite as much as us, which is obviously the other side of things. Do you feel as though there are any other clubs with a similar model to ours that that are probably in the lower half of the table?
Yeah, Bournemouth are one. Bournemouth are spending an awful lot of money on wages. Villa have done the same upon being promoted, and theirs is quite a scattergun approach. I think. Yeah, nobody knows, and frankly, I don't care what individual players are paid. But my understanding is, I think you've got a wage structure which is very flexible. So if you compare Palace to, say, Burnley, every player at Burnley is paid between 40 and 45 grand a week. So it's really narrow. But if you think about Burnley's players, they've got nobody who's outstanding. They are a team. Whereas I think this isn't a criticism of Palace, because everybody would like him in their team. You've got one or two real stars who are paid significantly more than the other players. The other players accept it because those stars keep you in that division, and therefore they keep the other players on a Premier League wage as opposed to a Championship wage. So everybody's happy to go along with it, provided the stars deliver and provided Palace are in this division. If you do have a bad season, then you've got problems, because you've got some players who are perhaps being overpaid, and Wolf isn't. He's worth every penny. But you've got other players who are perhaps being overpaid, and then you have the I don't know whether you remember 7 or 8 years ago, Birmingham signed a 6'7" Croatian, I think he was, called Nikola Zigic.
Yeah. Remember that name?
Yeah, he was huge. Yeah, he was the original Twiglet, wasn't he?
Literally, yeah.
And he was on 50 grand a week on a 4-year contract. They went down in the first year. People looked at him and said, "Well, we don't want him." So Birmingham then had to pay him for the next 3 years his full contract. You had Jack Rodwell at Sunderland on 80 grand a week. There was Jamie O'Hara at Wolves on huge sums of money, and he was playing for Wolves reserves when they were in League One on a £2 million a year contract. So that's the danger. If you get relegated and you've got good players, that's not a problem. They'll go back to the Premier League. If you get relegated and you've signed players on contracts which are high, then the player isn't going to walk away. And I'd never criticise a player for that. If somebody offered me a new job on half my money, I'm not going to take it. So
I've got 3 things to point out to you. John Gill says in the chat, why do we have to listen to so-called football experts on TV when we could be listening to Kieran? So people out there are loving what you're saying. I'm just interested in a couple of things. I want to pick up on a couple of things you said. Sure. Using the model of Palace spending quite highly on the income that they've got and Aston Villa doing the same. Presuming Aston Villa go down, are they facing financial ruin? Is my first question. My second point was that you were talking about Palace's figures of 2018, and I noticed that we haven't released our annual figures for 2019. Why are we not? Are we late to the party again?
Okay. If I answer each of those questions in turn, in respect of Aston Villa, they will not have financial ruin because their owners are ridiculously wealthy. Aston Villa were within an hour of going into liquidation in 2017 or 2018 when Tony Xi was in charge. The Chinese government had turned around to him and said, "We're not letting you come across from Hong Kong." And he used to pay the wages. He used to catch a flight with a suitcase full of money. It was that crazy a relationship, and then he would put that money into a UK bank when he got here. Chinese government stopped him and Villa nearly went bust. They do have new owners who can cover the costs. They've also got Jack Grealish, who they can, that will bring in another 40 or 50 million, even in a depressed transfer market. So I think Villa will be okay, but they will have a problem because they've signed, who's their number 9? Is their centre forward? It's not
the Brazilian guy, Wesley.
Yeah, Wesley. That's right. He's on a big contract. He ain't going anywhere if he's got any sense, because he's on massive wages. So they're going to have problems. They're going to have FFP problems. The only way that Villa avoided FFP points deduction last season, and this is thanks to you and me, by the way, because we're taxpayers, is because part of Aston Villa's training ground was bought by the government for the HS2 train line. And that made Villa an extra 20 million quid. Without that, they would have bust FFP.
But they've got the 344 to New Cross going through the middle of it.
And it's 20 minutes quicker to Manchester.
Yeah, hey, everyone's a winner.
So the 2019 accounts?
Sorry, the 2019 accounts. The Chancellor said on the 15th of March it was that normally you have 9 months to publish your accounts from the end of your financial year. So Palace's financial year ends on the 30th of June, and Rishi Sunak gave people an extra 3 months to file their results. Now, lots of clubs didn't take advantage of that. You'll have to speak to Mr. Parish. In my experience, Palace are always late publishing their accounts. I think he would get rid of an awful lot of flack if he just said, "Here they are, just go and read them." Because ultimately, it's only a set of numbers on a spreadsheet.
I was just about to say, is there actually an advantage to filing late?
Not really, because we're talking about information which is already 9 months late. I don't think he likes the scrutiny. I don't think he's helped himself on occasions. Having this company called the Smoke and Mirrors Group, which rents properties to Crystal Palace. I know it's a joke. I can get the joke, but it's all very well me, who's just, I'm just a blogger and a podcaster. If I make a joke, who cares? I think he's got a bit more elevation. He has got a position in society, and if he's sending that out, oh, it's a bit of a giggle. I'm charging Palace money. I'm doing it, smoke and mirrors. It just doesn't reflect well on him because, as we've said, I'm a Brighton fan, you're Palace fans, but we still expect our clubs to behave in a certain way, and that doesn't reflect particularly well on Steve.
It's that integrity word again, isn't it? People could easily question his integrity by smoke and mirrors, couldn't he?
That's right. And then the crazy thing is, he's put his money where his mouth is. He loves the club. He goes to all the matches. What do you want from an owner? Every fan wants the owner to be another fan who's got a big checkbook. And Steve ticks that boxes. He doesn't need to do the delays with the accounts. I just think it's a bit of a shame because if you look at the other clubs who haven't published the accounts, he's now in a group which involves Mike Ashley at Newcastle. Well, we all know that he's a wrong one. We've got Derby and Sheffield Wednesday are the only two clubs in the Championship. They are both on a charge from the Football League for selling stadiums to themselves at ludicrous prices. How Derby's stadium can be worth £80 million in the East Midlands when West Ham sold theirs for 40 with London land prices. I can't work that out. I'm not a surveyor. Perhaps somebody knows the answer to that, but it does seem very strange. You've got Sunderland have done the same in League One. Now, I don't know whether you've been following Sunderland's finances, but the Daily Mail has been doing an expose of them for the last few days. Doesn't reflect well on the owners. And the final person who's not published their accounts, it's the PFA, everybody's best mate, Gordon Taylor. Gordon Taylor's not published them because he doesn't want to reveal his salary because he gets so much stick for it. So if you put yourself into that group, it doesn't. I think that doesn't reflect well on Steve, and I don't think. And if he just sent them out, everybody would shut up.
Very interesting.
Included.
Yeah, hide them in plain sight.
Yeah, that's right.
Matt Miller has asked put a couple of points through on here, okay? And going back to financial fair play, because you touched on it a minute ago. Where does financial fair play come into with the owners pumping money in? How does things stand with financial fair play? It just seems to unbalance the books in my eyes, in my mind.
Right. The way that financial fair play works is that in the Premier League, you're allowed to lose £15 million over 3 years, but the owner can top that up to 105. So the owner can put in effectively an extra £30 million a year.
So if you apply our last 3 years' worth of losses to that, then that means that Mr. Parish is going to have to find the best part of 60 million. Is that right?
Yeah, but you remember you've got the new guys coming in, and the trouble with financial fair play is that
What new guys?
No, we haven't. Are you telling us something we don't know?
Well, I thought you got Blitzer and Harris.
No, they're already there. Right? They're trying to leave. They're not trying to come
right,
in.
Yeah,
they're trying to leave.
But they have bought in some shares. Financial fair play is an absolute minefield because we talk about this £105 million. If you spend money on a community scheme, Palace has got a good community scheme, we ignore that. So therefore, it's to encourage people to invest in it. If Palace spend money on their academy, that's excluded from FFP.
So they can offset. Okay.
Palace ladies team, Palace's infrastructure spend, all of those costs. So to actually work it out from the accounts, it means you need to spend a little bit of time going through the small print.
Very interesting.
Okay. That's cleared it up, I think.
Again, we touched on it a minute ago. We mentioned the word a minute ago, transfers. Clearly, with the financial situation worldwide created by the pandemic, how does Kieran see transfers being affected, and which teams in the Premier League would he see struggling to compete in the market as a result?
Okay. All football clubs have less money. So that if you've got less money, that will depress prices of things which are in a market. Now, football players' wages in the Premier League will not go down. And the reason for that is that most players are on long-term contracts. So if you take a look at David De Gea, at Manchester United. He signed a new contract in December 2019, a 5.5-year contract extension, or sorry, 6-year contract extension. And that means that Manchester United are committing to paying him £111 million over 6 years. If they fail to do that, then he's entitled to walk away from the club. So he's clearly, he's a good goalkeeper. Real Madrid are interested in him. They pay a large fee for him. So football players' wages won't go down until their contract expires. So the clubs in League 1 and 2 whose players are on 1 and 2 year contracts, those wages will go down. Premier League wages won't until players start to drift out of contracts. So that means clubs are committed to paying wages. They've got less money coming in because they won't be able to sell season tickets next season. We might have issues with the overseas TV money. So what else do the clubs spend money on that's significant? It's transfer fees. So that's going to automatically say, we've got less money coming in. We've still got the same amount of money going out on wages. There's less money in the pot to spend on transfers. So who can afford to spend the money? It's clubs with strong balance sheets. It's clubs who have got cash in the bank. Manchester United had £100 million in their bank account at the 31st of December. So therefore, they're in a strong position.
So this goes back to what you were saying earlier about revenue playing such an important part. You know, currently it's the revenue. If clubs that are revenue heavy, certainly as far as attendances are concerned, are struggling at the minute. But over the long term, they will be in a strong position then when the game comes back.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I still think that United will sell out all their matches. I've lived in Manchester, say, for the best part of 40 years. And this isn't a dig at United. I play for Trafford cricket team. But I've got a mate, Billy Tickets, who's a tout. He can get up to 80 tickets for every United home game. And he sells these to tourists. So if you're a United season ticket holder, and let's say that they're scheduled to play Bournemouth at 12:30 on a Saturday, well, most United fans can't be bothered. So they sell it to Billy Tickets. They get a bit of money. Billy, they'll sell it to a Thai tourist for 80 quid. The person sitting behind the tourist is one of Billy's mates. He taps him on the shoulder. Now give me the ticket back. So United will sell out every match because United have a big tourist fan base who will still come to Manchester. They'll come to Manchester from Torquay. They'll come from Denmark. They'll come from Ireland. Even in a half lockdown, that's still going to continue. I think some clubs are going to struggle a little bit, and I think Brighton are potentially one of those. Yeah, we sell out every match at present. Come back COVID, lots of people have lost their jobs. We've got the elderly fans who are 70 plus. They'll be thinking, there's no vaccine yet, for health reasons, should I be renewing my season ticket? Do I want to go? So I think Palace, Brighton, clubs of our size will have a potential decrease even when the terraces reopen.
Really interesting. Really interesting.
So, Nick, while you look for another question, talking about the impact on the game, and we're talking about the players' wages and that. So do you see this as one, in future contracts, pandemic clauses being put in, and secondly, so they don't get caught out again, and secondly, do you see this as being a sea change for the restructuring of a player's contract, full stop, and wages? And how do you think that will affect the agent side of things? Because I know that we've had a couple of questions about them being a pariah, a parasite on the sport. Is this the end of the agent, or is this just going to be more work for them, do you think?
Right. In terms of the first question, I think there could be potential clauses put into contracts for something along the pandemic. I think that is fair comment. Will there be a major change? I always say, did football learn anything from the collapse of ITV Digital?
Okay, let's go any further with that. That's the answer there. Yeah, you're right.
As football fans, we've got very short memories. Yeah, I always look at the case of Leicester. Claudio Ranieri, Leicester in 2016 was what was the perfect storm of a good team, relatively weak performances from the rest of the big clubs or from the big clubs, and they won the Premier League, and it was an amazing achievement. And I don't know anybody that resented them winning the Premier League. 6 months later, he was sacked. So if somebody can go from hero to zero that quickly for the most incredible achievement in the 20th century, I would say sports-wise, then I think we can quickly return to, we're in the January transfer window, we're 5th from bottom, we've got a chance to sign an Italian striker who wants 80 grand a week, no relegation clause, no COVID-19 clause. We've seen his YouTube reel. He looks good. We'll sign him. It's going to happen, isn't it?
His brother.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was actually, Ian, you were alluding to Teresa's question, which was the first football player to engage in an agent to represent him. And does Kieran think they are a parasite on the beautiful game? And also, she writes, how do the players' sell-on clauses work? And is there a time limit on them usually?
In terms of agents, my biggest asset's my house. When I sold it, I got an agent to sell it for me. I could have tried to negotiate a sale myself. So agents do a job. Now, there are good agents and there are bad agents, and I've taught agents, and they're an interesting bunch. Some do have a good ethical and moral code. Some of them genuinely are there to look after the best interests of their clients. The trouble is, you and I could become an agent. All you have to do, go onto the Football Association website, pay the Football Association £500. You don't have to take an exam, and you become a registered intermediary, and you can represent anybody who's 18 years or older. If you want to represent somebody who's 16 or 17, then you've got to have a CFB check. You've got to to prove that you've got no criminal record with regards to sex offences. But if you want to represent somebody who's 18 or over, it costs you 500 quid. Then that's going to attract an awful lot of cowboys, because people see the money in football.
Absolutely.
So I think the regulation of agents is the problem, not the agents necessarily themselves.
And that's fascinating you just said that, because again, it was Matt Miller said, do you think they should be regulated? Very simply, should they be regulated?
Well, there used to be some form of regulation, but here's the problem. There are, I think there's 208 clubs, sorry, there are 208 football associations registered with FIFA. So that means you've got 208 different types of local law when it comes to employment. FIFA have effectively washed their hands. They say there's so many transfers taking place internationally that we can't do it. I know a chief executive of a football club that was trying to sign a player from Argentina. He went across there. He was trying to have negotiations, and there were 9 different people claiming to be the player's representative. I think we could control things in the UK for domestic transfers, but as soon as you get into international transfers, there are so many countries where, and this isn't being jingoistic, where it's what you know and who you pay to make. I mean, I know I've got a friend who organises the players when they go overseas, when they go to see their families, and he works for one of the Premier League football clubs. And he said to get players back from some of the African countries, you have to take an envelope along to the embassy to say, here's some money for you. The player can now come back, and that's how it's done. And the same happens in South America and so on. And that's how business is done overseas. So regulation only works if you've got a system of governance and law that is universally being observed, and that isn't the case on a global basis.
Fascinating stuff. Absolutely fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen out there in Facebook land, I hope you are getting as much out of this as I am. I mean, we've had some learned guests on here before, but not like this. This is superb stuff. Are you ready for a whole page on financial fair play? And by the way, I've still got his one still sitting there. This is, I'm going to paraphrase, if you don't mind, Graham, Nigel and Georgia Wagwu. I'm going to paraphrase basically what they're asking for. How does financial fair play work exactly, and where do Palace sit within financial fair play? Should financial fair play be relaxed next season in order to ease the financial constraints many other clubs are going to be facing, or will the club's situation ironically force the clubs to work within their means a little bit? And George then went on to say, how do teams such as Man City, PSG, Barcelona seemingly act unrestricted within financial fair play? Lots there, I'm sorry.
Okay, right. I've scribbled those down. There are two financial fair play models. The first of which is what I alluded to earlier. It's what we refer to as a break-even model, where you say that clubs are restricted to the amount of losses that they can make. So in the Premier League, it's £105 million over 3 years. For UEFA, it's €30 million over 3 years. So if you're playing in the Europa Cup or the Champions League, the maximum loss you can make is €30 million. And in League One, in the Championship, it's £39 million over 3 years. But in both the Premier League and the Championship, you're allowed to do some strange stuff. So this is why we've seen Sheffield Wednesday sell the stadium to a company called Sheffield 3 Limited, and Sheffield 3 Limited just happens to be owned by the guy that owns Sheffield Wednesday, and Sheffield Wednesday made a profit of just over £30 million on that deal. So therefore, that allowed them to satisfy financial fair play. If you look at Sheffield Wednesday's sponsors, Sheffield Wednesday, they take perimeter adverts from a company called D Taxis. D Taxis is also owned by Delphon Chansiri, who is the owner of Sheffield Wednesday. What's unusual about D Taxis is that they don't own any taxis, which is pretty fundamental.
Oh boy!
It's almost akin to I don't know what the mob used to do. The laundering money, isn't it? Allegedly, but it's the vehicles that are available and that people think up are just never cease to amaze me.
That's right. So, and remember, I said to you earlier that academy costs don't count towards financial fair play. So, in 2016, Derby County were trying to sign a player from the Premier League because their owner was keen to get a decent player in. He was coming from another club. He was demanding a high money, and they knew that if they met his wage demands, they would be very close to financial fair play. But some of the other players had a clause in their contract that they had to be matched to the highest paid player at the club. So if he came in. So what the club did was they paid him less, and then they employed his mother as an academy scout. So therefore, the money going through the academy didn't count towards FFP. This lad came in and he was on about the same money as their existing highest paid player, so nobody else got a pay rise. Now, I don't want to embarrass the player. I don't want to embarrass the player's mother. His dad's name, Paul Ince.
Oh, really?
Well, listen, I feel as though we're doing you a disservice, because Kieran, because you obviously got a finger on all these potential loopholes. But do you think every club is aware of what other clubs are doing, or is this something you can keep to yourself and just say, look, if you want to know what so and so is doing and how they're getting away with it,
He's written books on it.
I'll set up Kieran taxes.
There it is.
I'm not doing this for me. I wrote this book. It came out in January. It's got all of this type of nonsense in it. All of the royalties from this book go to the Trussell Trust, which is the leading food bank charity in the country. £9.99 from Waterstones. That's the plug. That's it over. Okay.
Well, you're
No,
more
no,
than
no, no.
you're more than welcome to that. I thought I was dreading you saying it's going to Maguire's taxes.
But honestly, Price of Football book out there, guys. Get on it, okay? And if you haven't listened to the Price of Football
Highly
podcast,
recommend it.
please do so. It's a great listen, a fantastic listen. Get on there, give them a like, tell them Nick and Ian sent you because it's really good. Oh, on the subject, so we were talking earlier about Newcastle Sunderland. Does Kieran feel that the current situation has made a number of the clubs more attractive to proposition for takeover moving forward? As Saudis have made a move on Newcastle, with another waiting in the wings if it doesn't go through. And as a subsequent on that, Kieran, the Saudis have made that move for Newcastle. It's likely to be ratified, as we know. Okay, are you aware of the same people's interest ever in Crystal Palace?
Well, there are two questions there. It's very much a buyer's market at present. So there are a lot of people that are cash rich, that are in a position to buy football clubs. I've done valuations of football clubs myself on behalf of people. Clearly, that's a separate issue. But I'm saying to interested parties is that you can get clubs at a bargain. Charlton effectively went for £1 in January.
Yeah, that was overpriced, though, wasn't it? In my mind.
Well, I mean, I think that was a classic case of be careful what you wish for. Unfortunately, because I don't want any club to go. You've been through it with Palace. I've been through it with Brighton. They're going through it at present. Rivalries aside, you can't have a rivalry unless there's a club.
Exactly.
Correct.
So, I get on. My neighbour Grant is Palace mad. He's not missed a match for 7 years. I work with Kevin. I'm working with you guys. You give me an evening in a pub with a Palace fan 7 days a week compared to the plastics who support Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal, and Liverpool.
And I'll tell you what, every single Palace fan out there, every single Palace fan that was watching this tonight or over the next few days, they are absolutely applauding what you just said. Sorry to interrupt.
And we'll take you up on it as well, Kieran.
That point, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, Grant Saunders is paying as well. Carry on, mate.
In terms of Saudi being interested in other clubs, well, remember they already own Sheffield United.
Yeah.
So Sheffield United and Newcastle, I don't think there's necessarily interest from Saudi. There's certainly interest from other international parties at present, but I think a lot of people are holding back a little bit because they don't know when the revenue is going to start again. And why buy a business when you know you've got wage costs going out of 6, 7, 8, 10 million pounds a month, and you don't know when the money's going to start coming into the business? You wouldn't do it, would you?
Of course you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't. I mean, there is a subsequent question on that as well, and it's one that I don't even know we should really be touching on. If I'm honest, I'm going to ask it anyway. And if you don't think it's right that we touch it, we'll move on. How do you think their human rights record would affect the thought process of the Premier League, and how does the fit and proper test work? How does the fit and proper test work if there's still such a thing?
Okay, I've been fortunate enough to teach in an awful lot of countries. So I've taught in Russia. The human rights in Russia are pretty grim. I was teaching in China this morning online. I've taught in various countries in Africa and Southeast Asia as well. I don't think we can single out Saudi Arabia as having worse human rights rules or behaviour than some of the other countries that I've already mentioned. So I don't think it would therefore be part of the Premier League's remit. I'd also say that fit and proper is one of those words that you instantly think that there is some moral or ethical element to it, just as financial fair play makes us think that there's something noble about that as well. There's nothing noble about financial fair play. It's designed to stop anybody joining the gang of rich clubs. The fit and proper test has been renamed owners and directors, and there are two elements to it. A, are you a criminal? Okay, so do you have a conviction which is unspent? So, are you either A, in prison, or B, have you been released early from prison, but your conviction still has some time? You're effectively out on parole. So that's 99.5% of people will pass that test. The second element to it is, can you prove that you have the resources to run this club for the next couple of years? Well, if the Saudi Arabian government doesn't have enough money to run a football club, God help us all, because they, and whilst oil prices are very depressed at present, Saudi Arabia has made huge sums of money historically over the last 30 to 40 years when prices were that much higher. So on the two key elements, Saudi Arabia would appear to pass. The only thing which is holding that back is that some people are claiming that there are links between the owners and an organization called Be Out. Now, Be Out is a pirate TV station which operates in the Middle East. It effectively sells the same stuff as the hooky cards you can get from blokes down the pub.
Yeah,
and Billy tickets.
That's right.
Billy tickets.
And you can't get in the Middle East. The Premier League have sold the rights to Qatar, the Qatari broadcaster Bein. But Saudi Arabia bans Bein signal because at present there's a cold war between Saudi and Qatar. So that's the issue. Qatar are claiming that the Saudi people trying to buy Newcastle are also involved in this piracy scheme. If there's evidence, then the Premier League are duty bound to investigate it. If there's no evidence, then the deal goes through.
Well, I think there probably is a similarity between the Sheffield club and the Newcastle potential buyer. I think it's the Saudi royal family are involved somewhere along the line, and it's just different members of the same family. But that will probably be. I may have that information wrong. Sorry, Ian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, just following on from Saudi royal family, more to do with the footballing perspective of things, Kieran. What impact do you think, if it all goes through with Newcastle and they bring to the table this unimaginable wealth, even that would make all other teams envy? Just what impact do you think it's going to have on the football environment?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned to you earlier, financial fair play, nothing to do with fairness. It was designed to stop another Chelsea or Manchester City. So the
but
club
they'll just buy St James's Park for $500 million, won't they, or something?
Well, I think the Premier League will probably monitor those particular issues. For all of Mike Ashley's wrongs, he did run a really tight ship at St James's Park. So whoever inherits the club will be buying a club which, from a financial fair play point of view, has an awful lot of wiggle room. When we said that Palace can't overspend too much this season because they're not that far away from the FFP limit, Newcastle are light years away from it because he's always broken even.
Yeah, he's a good businessman. Whatever your thoughts on it. Listen, I'm conscious of the time that we're taking up. Even your family are wondering where you are and what you look like. So I've got a couple of quick ones, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. Could Andrew sent me quite a few questions here, so I'm going to rattle through them. So feel free to give me yes and no's. Could the English Premier League bring TV contract deals in early to extend and offset some of the club's losses?
I think they want to in the longer term. I think in the short to medium term, they are committed to Sky and BT. I don't think they want to take the risk. I mean, the present deal, we're in the first year of a 3-year contract. So clearly this contract will continue until 2022. Everybody's seen the relative success of Amazon Prime. I think Simon Jordan's called it Premflix, where the Premier League start to sell the rights to all the games. On a longer term basis, I think that will be the case, and effectively the likes of Sky will be simply used for as outside hires for contracts and things of that nature.
Can football survive without live crowds? Because Steve Parish has actually alluded to this in one of his recent interviews. He can see this going on with no crowds in the stadium, obviously for this season, but also all of next season. And will you see this as the start of ground sharing to reduce costs?
I think I agree with Steve. I don't expect a return to mass gatherings until we have a vaccine or until there has been other ways of dealing with the virus. I think the risks to public health are too high. There are too many vulnerable groups who could be infected if this takes place. Ground sharing, I don't think so, because you've still got one old stadium. So the costs of running a stadium aren't huge, and you've also got issues such as naming rights. So there's no way that Spurs and Arsenal would ground share, because Arsenal is called the Emirates and Spurs wants theirs to be called the Nike Bowl or whatever it's going to be. So remember, clubs do receive money from sponsors for the stadia, and also I think from a identity point of view. And we've got to remember, these are our clubs. They don't belong, the likes of Steve Parish and Tony Bloom and the Glazers, they are custodians. These are our clubs. You've ground shared before. That was no fun. We've ground shared. That was no fun. There's no desire coming from it. I think that when crowds do return, I think that would have a hugely negative impact upon clubs' ability to generate cash, because match day would go down. And also, I think we'd lose some of our soul.
It's precisely. I absolutely agree with that last point. But your point about not wishing to ground share and everything else, but also and not being able to socially distance within the stadium. This is why, in my mind, which is I know it changes from Ian's. Okay, but in my mind, football shouldn't be coming back yet in any guise without behind closed doors. At all. They cannot socially distance. How can you socially distance from a corner? Your own chairman, in actual fact, Mr. Barber, okay, he was saying exactly the same thing. I think I got the drift that he was very anti bringing it back. And I know he will go with the consensus of the Premier League. 1 second now, I'd just like Kieran to respond.
There is no such thing as a no risk, but then what you can do is keep risks to a minimum. When I go to Tesco's to get the groceries, that's a risk.
Yeah.
And I take it on board. I've heard Glenn Murray's comments. I've heard Sergio Aguero, Raheem Sterling. And I think the players have actually come out of this, in my opinion, with a lot of maturity and a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
They are saying, well, hold on, I've got a 6-year-old asthmatic child who's high risk. So what do you expect me to do as a professional athlete? Why are these matches taking place? And let's be honest, the only reason why the matches are taking place, it's not for sporting integrity. It's not for it's not to cheer up the nation. It is for money. It's because they don't want to have to pay back that £1.2 billion. And there's nothing wrong with that, because there's a risk that the clubs could go bust. But let's not try and pretend there's anything noble about it.
Ian, you wanted to ask something?
I mean, there are a couple of things. The social distancing thing, I think it's we do take it to heart and quite literally to a disruptive point, in that I agree social distancing has an impact on people attending games, thousands of people coming from thousands of different areas and environments. But as the Germans are showing at the minute, you can isolate squads, and still get on with it. And so contact in the game in that context shouldn't make any difference. It's no different to what it was 4 months ago. If they're clean and they get tested regularly, I don't think contact's an issue. Social distancing on a pitch is an issue. What I am interested in, though, coming back to the finances of the game, is what are we going to learn from this moving forward? I mean, Nick's quite rightly said, Kieran, and suggested, you're in agreement, in that until there's a vaccine, we can't see any attendances being in grounds. So what are the clubs looking at, or, with regards to keeping that income coming in, season tickets, etc., etc.? Something we've been discussing on the show a number of times over the past few months is about away season tickets, digital tickets, that the clubs will sell stream access to a stream for the away games for those that actually can't attend. Can you see something along those lines actually being pushed by the FA and the Premier League?
Very much so. I think the clubs and the Premier League will work together. Certain matches are covered by broadcasting agreements. So we've got 92 games remaining this season in the Premier League, 47 of which have already been sold to Sky and BT. The other 45, every club has got a database. Every club has got your email address. And they might say, look, you've been a season ticket holder. We'll offer you a rebate, but how about this? We'll give you half of your rebate and we'll give you a digital ticket for the remaining 9 games of the season. Do you fancy it? I'd snap the hands off. I think most fans would.
Of course.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see if they can charge a full season ticket price for nothing but streaming moving forward, because I don't think many people will go for that, because you're paying £25, £35, £35 a head to actually attend the game, but that's for the atmosphere, that's for the experience, that's for catching up with your mates, etc. Watching it on a sofa, I can't see that they're going to be able to charge any more than £5 a game.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. There is a scarcity value. There is a my argument's always been that my weekend experience watching my team is a chance to see my mates. It's a chance to catch up. It's the anticipation. It's the drama before. It's predicting. It's commiserating afterwards. It's a great day out with guys I've known for 50 years, which is normally ruined by 90 minutes of football.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, and
in our world.
So if you just offer me the football part of it, everything else, the football is the hook upon which the rest of the day rotates. It's getting to the same pub at 12:30. It's catching that same train. It's getting that curry on the way home. My whole day revolves around the football, but the football is not the only reason for that day, and therefore that shared experience. It's what other thing in your life makes you hug complete strangers?
Absolutely.
Other than football.
I know.
So
I'm sure there'll be a few answers on the chat for that.
I have to say, I do fear through your expertise tonight, Kieran, that I may well have lost my bet and I'm going to have to buy that bloke sitting there a curry. And it goes against... The only worst thing it could be for me is buying a Brighton fan a pint, okay, and buying him a curry. Listen, I'm going to try and wrap these things up a little bit for you. The Price of Football podcast, the Price of Football book, as we've seen, $9.95 from all your good outlets. Kieran, where can they follow you?
I'm a Price of Football on Twitter. I do an awful lot of club analysis on Twitter. I've just been putting out the wages for League 2 and the losses for the lower league clubs. To me, it doesn't matter whether you support Liverpool or Manchester United or Worksop Town. They're our club. So I do a lot of work on Twitter. I do the Price of Football with Kevin Day, who is, as you all know, is a big Palace fan. That goes out on Mondays and Thursdays. So we do a Monday show, which is a I was about to say a reader's wives show, but actually it's listeners' questions. Must get that right.
Readers' wives.
I've no doubt.
I was thinking of something else there.
Kevin about that.
And then we do a Thursday show, which is looking at the football finance news of the week. So, what's been going on, what clubs are up to, what the FAs are up to. So we've just been looking at the claims, the charges against Stevenage and Macclesfield. So it looks at all of football in the UK mainly. Do a few overseas stories as well. It seems to go down quite well.
Ladies and gentlemen, give him a follow because I'm sure I've got to ask you one more question.
Sure.
Will you come back?
Yeah, of course. Love to, mate.
Listen, it's been fantastic. I'm going to just wrap up by saying we're having a little bit of a break at the moment. Even the quizzes have taken a bit of a break. Ian, when are the quizzes back?
Oh, that's throwing me under the bus.
Yeah.
Maybe in a week or two. We're working on other bits. I mean, what we want to do is we want to get the shows back up and running, don't we?
Ladies and gentlemen, send your hate mail directly to ianlyons.com and nigelcroucher.co.uk for no quizzes this week. We're planning loads of scenes and stuff in the background behind the scenes. Watch out on the socials for all the stuff coming up as we head, hopefully, to the restart of the Premier League in some sort of guise. Thank you to Lucy in the background for producing, Ian for all your work setting this up, John, Graham, Kevin, Tom, all of you. You know that your support in the background is massively appreciated. But most of all, thank you to our fantastic, illustrious guest, Kieran. That was just outstanding. Thank you so much, mate.
Thanks very much for the invite and great to chat to you guys. Nice to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Nick Philpott. It's been a great discussion this evening. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again very soon. Good night, everyone.